First of all, I am embarrassed that only one out of however many ministers have shown up. Where is everyone else? Where is Olivia Chow? I don't see anybody, including these organizations that claim to be representing people, until the cameras show up. Where's the humanity?
It is shameful that Canada has allowed this to happen, and our leaders, the people who are in government, need to step up. Where are the 24 Liberal MPs? Where are the cabinet ministers that call this city home? Are they okay with this? Are they okay with LGBT people who have fled persecution and potentially threats of death to come here and live on the street? That is not okay.
I would tell them to get off their ass and get my people into a bed tonight. As an Indigenous African Canadian, I have the right to have my people in here just as well as white people have the right to have the Ukrainians in here. Find a fucking bed for them.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in downtown Toronto. And folks, the situation at the corner of Richmond and Peter Street, well, it gets worse by the day. As you can see behind me, there are well over 100 migrant claimants. The problem is there is literally no room at the inn. According to the City of Toronto, all the shelter spaces, all 9,000 that is, are at capacity. And what's more, 3,000, in other words, 1/3 of those shelter beds, are already accommodating refugees. So there simply isn't any room.
Well, the refugees that are stranded in front of Peter Street, we know that our shelter is full. We also know that 1/3 of the residents in shelter right now are refugees. We also know that refugees is also a federal responsibility.
Now, I can tell you earlier today, more than 20 community groups came here demanding the resignation of Gord Tanner. He's the general manager of the city's Shelter Support and Housing Administration. And they say that the city is just not doing a good enough job, what with dozens of refugees sleeping overnight on this street corner. They go on to say, quote, "The city is feeding into a xenophobic narrative that refugees are a burden on the system and claiming misleading increases in the number of refugees," end quote. But is that necessarily true? For example, I don't see any kind of xenophobia going on here. Secondly, let's face facts. They are a burden. It costs money, your money, in the way of tax dollars, to feed, clothe, and house these people. So I'm not sure what the firing of Mr. Tanner would accomplish, especially given that this is a federal government responsibility. After all, we've had years in which the irregular border crossing at Roxham Road, none of the immigration laws were enforced there. Thousands of people came into Canada during that time. Refugees are still coming in to Canada through valid border point crossings, including airports. And when a city is at the max in terms of its infrastructure to house homeless and refugees, what are they supposed to do? In any event, we're here now. We're going to try to speak to some of these refugees. Most of them are from African nations, and we'll try to figure out why it is they came here, what they were fleeing, and what is life like on the streets here at the corner of Peter and Richmond. Now, folks, before I get into the nitty-gritty regarding this story, I have a favor to ask. Can you please go to migrantreports.com? That's migrantreports.com. As you know, Rebel News receives no government funding, nor would we accept a nickel even if it were offered, but we need your help to carry out our journalism.
Shared on the weekend. My team is putting together as we speak. I'm going to send that over. So it's still going to take some time, but what I'm happy about is the fact that I was able to speak with the minister. He knows this is an issue. And he's going to give you a dedicated person who will work on your files, okay? We're going to keep working to get you your papers. It's going to take time.
Mr. Vong, how you doing there? David Menzies with Rebel News, and of course you're the MP for Spadina Fort York. What do you make of what's going on right here in your riding?
I think what's happening here at 129 Peter Street is shameful. Like I was saying, 40 years ago, my parents were welcomed to this country as refugees. They had shelter, they had support. The fact that these people are having to stay on the streets is disgraceful, while the government plays politics, while the mayor plays politics when she could be requesting that the federal government open up the armory to provide temporary shelter to get them off the street. Instead, these people are being used as bargaining chips for political leverage, and that must stop.
And we need at least $160 million from the federal government to help us in sheltering these refugees. And immediately, we need the government, the federal government, and the provincial government to come up with a plan. It's a crisis, it's an emergency.
Well, folks, I'm with Salim Sagar. He is serving as a spokesman for this group of migrant claimants. And Salim, can you tell us, what is the situation here? People drive by, you can see hundreds of cars every hour going by, and they see what looks to be like a tent city, people camped out outside. What indeed is going on?
Well, their human rights are being violated as we speak. They're being embarrassed, degraded. This is cruel and unusual punishment for them for something they didn't do anything. They're invited into this country. A lot of them are, if not all of them, are seeking asylum. Before I got here and before we started making noise, they were sleeping on the floor on cardboard with plastic sheets. There was no tents. The tents are courtesy of Kevin. Not all of them, sorry. The tarps are courtesy of
Kevin Vong, the MP for Spadina Fort York.
Yes, sir. And then the tents that we put up in the night and when it's raining, courtesy of myself and donations from friends. Thank you all. Food, breakfast and lunch I've been providing. Every once in a while these organizations will come in and bring some food, but with it comes a bunch of cameras and a whole negative vibe that, to be honest, is disgraceful. Bottom line is these guys are stuck out here on the street, cold and confused.
We just brought over Ukrainians. We found homes for them all. But it seems like when my people come here, there's no homes. This is an insult. I'm telling you, this is an insult.
Do you think the Justin Trudeau Liberals are trying to play it both ways? I mean, for years we saw the government turn a blind eye to the so-called irregular border crossing at Roxham Road. Thousands of migrant claimants came in. We had Justin Trudeau himself issuing the tweet, #Welcome to Canada. But there is a price to pay, is there not? I mean, when all these people are coming into the country, there has to be shelter, food, clothing. So why isn't the federal government stepping up on essentially a situation that, as far as I can tell, it created?
I think there are a lot of questions about why this government continues to say one thing and do the opposite. The Prime Minister has gotten up 4 times now in the last 4 years to talk about how proud he is that Canada is the top place to resettle refugees in the world. And yet he does not provide the funding for these people when they get here. He can't get up and talk about how proud he is to support the LGBT community and yet turn a blind eye when the majority of the asylum seekers here are people fleeing persecution because they are members of the LGBT community.
Salim, have you spoken to some of the claimants? Have you found out if they have, skill sets in which they could actually contribute to Canada?
There is a lot of skilled trades workers here. Actually, I've met a surgeon and I've met a couple of doctors. There's not one person here that I wouldn't hire.
We've seen the federal government, Prime Minister Trudeau himself say #Welcome to Canada some 6 years ago. We've turned a blind eye to border security. And if it's the federal government doing that, and immigration is a federal government bailiwick, shouldn't they be stepping up and taking care?
Listen, Trudeau is an old Canadian like we are. He's Indigenous as well. His people were expelled 7 times from Canada.
He's French
He understands the situation. I don't know whose problem it is. All I know, anybody with white skin and blonde hair has had a hand in what's going on today. I know we as Canadians,
this is puzzling.
We as Canadians have brought over Ukrainians.
Isn't that puzzling? Because I would see someone like Mayor Chow sort of gung-ho on refugee and migrant claimant rights. So why do you think she is reluctant to go as far as she can?
I think you have to ask her. I think you also should ask her why it is that she is not calling her NDP colleagues in the federal government, at the federal level, who have a confidence and supply agreement with the Liberals, who are the only opposition party that have the power to compel the Liberals to actually do something. So instead of continuing to get up on Twitter and say all the right things in front of the cameras, Jagmeet Singh actually has the power in the confidence and supply agreement to compel the Liberals to act. Why aren't they doing that? And why isn't Mayor Chow calling her NDP federal colleagues?
I don't even understand. I'm only really starting to learn what's really going on with the federal government. I have my opinions because I pay attention, but I'm really going to put it onto the people. We need to hold them accountable because we've been so disconnected for so long that they do what they want and there's no consequences. You are forgetting they work for us. You're not seeing that tax coming out of every paycheck? I feel it.
And Salim, what is the end game here? I mean, I would imagine this must be terribly embarrassing for the federal government. It's getting more and more media traction. Are the ranks here at this, temporary shelter going to continue to grow, or is the federal government going to do something? I spoke to independent MP Kevin Vuong just a few minutes ago, and he was talking about federal government buildings like the Armory being used as a temporary shelter. At least you get people indoor, there are proper toilets, etc. How does this play out in the days and weeks ahead?
At first, there was no game plan whatsoever. I was just helping people, and I had no idea how long I was going to stay. The more and more that I've witnessed and seen, first of all, I am embarrassed that only one out of however many ministers have shown up. Where is everyone else? Where is Olivia Chow? I don't see anybody, including these organizations that claim to be representing people, until the cameras show up. Where's the humanity?
So I guess, ma'am, at the end of the day, if you had the ear of the Prime Minister or the Federal Minister of Immigration, what would you tell them right now to get this situation cleared up?
I would tell them that they were aware that they invited my people into this country. And when they invited them in, just like the Ukrainians, they should have had a bed for them. This is not a new situation, but it creates a situation. I live on a street where I have my black people running around with mental illness because of what countries they come from. But it creates jobs, because in 2 weeks they're going to be on crack. Then they're going to need social workers and they're going to need lawyers. It creates jobs for white people. I would tell them to get off their ass and get my people into a bed tonight. As an Indigenous African Canadian, I have the right to have my people in here just as well as white people have the right to have the Ukrainians in here. Find a fucking bed for them. That's my story.
It is shameful that Canada has allowed this to happen, and our leaders, the people who are in government, need to step up. Where are the 24 Liberal MPs? Where are the cabinet ministers that call this city home? Are they okay with this? Are they okay with LGBT people who have fled persecution and potentially threats of death to come here and live on the street? That is not okay.
Well, there you have it, folks. I don't think there is any question, really, who is to blame for what is happening at the corner of Peter and Richmond Streets. It is the federal government. When you allow and actually encourage thousands of illegal migrants to come into the country, when you send out a tweet saying #welcome to Canada, you bear the responsibility of, accommodating your guests. And instead, they are in a city where the shelter system is at capacity. It is up to the federal government to do something about this. And like MP Kevin Vuong said, there is the means to accommodate these people. There are federal buildings that can be temporarily renovated to be shelters, to allow these people to get on their feet, get jobs, be part of society. I guess what we've learned from the Justin Trudeau Liberals is that talk is cheap, or as they say out west, all hat, no cattle. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Folks, as you know, Rebel News believes in going right to the source to get the story, but we need your help. Can you kindly go to migrantreports.com, That's migrantreports.com. And if you're able to, please make a donation.